Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 2022 West Virginia Cybersecurity and Game Developers Expo. I am Patrick Smith, and we're here today talking with Katie Baker. We're going to talk to her about her trajectory into the industry and advice she would have for us about getting into game design. And I will throw out there for you all, if this is your first expo of ours, Katie has a bit of a story to pass with us. She was part of Vandalia Softworks previously, which I talked to about gaming. Um, I think I talked to you at one point about a second game there in the middle, but then I also remember when you were with Birkenbake and we talked about your tabletop game. So
Yeah, kind of all over the place, just trying to be creative as possible, with as much as possible. I love working on projects and coming up with ideas. So some of them come to fruition, some of them don't, but hey, that's how it goes.
I imagine that's going to kind of be part of your talk. That's
Yeah,
how
a
you be
little bit,
successful.
a little bit.
So let me go ahead and get your flow chart up here so you can be showing that and talk us through. And then at the end, we'll come back and talk to you about any questions we get and about advice you would have for people out there.
Awesome, sounds good. Thanks. All right. Hi everybody. So I don't have any fancy PowerPoint. I've just got a flow chart because that's how my brain works. But first of all, like Patrick said, I'm Katie Baker. I'm born in Elkins, but mostly raised in Morgantown. I've lived all over West Virginia, Parkersburg, Fairmont. I've had family from Mingo County, so literally all corners of the state. I've lived in or have family in. So I take a lot of pride in the state, and that's one of the reasons why I've continued to stay here. And I want to bring more opportunities to the state in some capacity. Another pipe dream. But I'm here, like Patrick said, to talk about sort of my experience and journey. Currently, I work as a staff engineer at Whitethorn Games. I work remotely, which is pretty great. But I wrestled for a long time about, what it meant to be like a programmer in game dev, and also like what kind of role did I want to do in game development? Like, I love games, now what? So, which you can see here on right here. So, we'll start with this first chunk. My family did a lot of gaming when I grew up. Like, my stepmom loved to play adventure games. We played like Myst and Gabriel Knight and Secret of Monkey Island, which, hooray, they're making another one. Can you believe it? Um, and my dad, he played like Age of Empires, he played the Thief games. So I was constantly either like watching them play games or playing games with them. So I, my the first console they bought me was a Dreamcast, which I still have to this day and love to, bring out every now and then and play Skies of Arcadia. It's near and dear to my heart, and I thought, wow, like, if my family could bond and have such good times with this, like, I want to bring this to other families. Of course, I didn't think that when I was like 7. I was just like, oh, these are cool. What can I do now? Um, so I went to West Virginia University and I got my bachelor's in computer science. But in getting my bachelor's, I really struggled with like the computer science program. I didn't know if I liked it or not. I was okay at it. I wasn't, like a genius or a prodigy with it. I just sort of, chugged along and did my thing. But I also, I liked games. I wanted to be really creative. So I thought, well, maybe I should major in art instead. Like, maybe programming is not the thing for me. Because there are so many roles that make up a game, right? You've got your art, you've got your sound, you've got lighting, UI design, like so many different disciplines that come into play when you're making a game, that like it just overwhelmed me. And I was like, am I specializing correctly? Right. And of course, you see I've got this yellow cloud up here that's like, am I good enough to do this? Like, can I even do this? Like, I don't know, maybe I'm figuring it out, right? So I get like a minor in art and my bachelor's in computer science, and I'm like, okay, well, this will be useful for me, right? I'm sure. But I didn't love it. I didn't love the computer science program. And I had a few people that kind of like helped me along. But I'll circle back to that later in my talk because it's important. So I graduate, right? And now it's like, well, what do I do now? Okay, so I've got this bachelor's degree. How do I now get into games? This is what I want to do. Like what the heck? So at my university, we have the WVU Game Developers Club, which a group of us, actually the folks from Vandalia Softworks and we kind of rebooted, mostly Jordan. That was definitely like a passion project for him. And he had students come together and participate in game jams, which I had heard of them, but I had never done one before. And this was probably back in like, I want to say like 2015, 2016. So a little while ago. Um, and he was like, well, yeah, we're going to do a game jam. And I was like, okay, well, I'll participate, I guess. And so we made like this really small 2D game. It was for the Ludum Dare Jam in October, and it was like Halloween themed, sweet and spooky is what it was called. Like you were in a haunted mansion, and you had to collect, candy or whatever. But that was like my first taste into like working on a team with people and collaborating on creating a game. And I was like, this is awesome. Yes, this is what I want to do. Okay, but like how do I get paid to do that? Like what's the next step? Like what do I do? So I got a different job. I worked at the NASA West Virginia Space Grant Consortium here at the university, and I also worked in 4-H for like the next 6 years, while I figured out how can I get the experience that I need to get this job in the games industry. So I did game jams. I would just go to itch.io and look at what was available on their calendar and be like, okay, what fits like my kind of skill set, like what fits what I want to do. But when I was joining these game jams, I found that like I wasn't really doing programming. I did a little bit of programming, but I was usually doing like design work, or I was writing dialogue for characters, or I was doing like production stuff where I was like making sure the team met regularly and like keeping track of like documents and things like that. So I was wearing a lot of hats, which is pretty common when you participate in game jams, but like I wasn't narrowing down my like field of focus. Like, yes, I was trained to be a programmer, but I'm really not utilizing that skill set. So I dabbled a little bit with freelancing. I did some freelance programming, I did some freelance community management, things like that. And I also, every time I'm doing these game jams or like working freelance, I'm building out my network of people. So I'm like making contacts, working, just like bumbling my way through hoping to get a job in the industry, right? And all the while I'm doing all of this stuff, of course, I have this thought in the back of my head that's like, am I really good enough to do this? Like, do I have the skill set to do this? I didn't go to school for like game design or game development. I went to school for computer science, where they were like, this is how you analyze an algorithm. Like it was a very different kind of reality. So I simultaneously felt really prepared and super underprepared. And there were also the fears of like, hey, game dev industry, there's lots of turnover, there's lots of burnout. And, there's also this question of like, do you want to go AAA or indie? Like, what do you want to specialize in and what do you want to work in? It was stressing me out while I was working a job that was like not really related to what I really wanted to do, right? And then I did this one game jam where it was called Unity versus Unreal versus Godot. So basically, you could use one of those three engines and then submit your entry. And actually, my friend Connor, who I worked on Perspectrum with, he was like, "Yeah, the next game I make, I want to use the Godot engine." So I was like, "Okay, I will try out Godot. Like, why not?" And I fell in love with it. I loved the engine. It's super lightweight. It's super great for like 2D work. And it's really coming a long way as far as like 3D work. It's just, it feels intuitive. It feels nice to work in. Like it's just really refreshing. I've found with like Unreal, it can be very overwhelming, right? You can, as was mentioned in the previous talk, there's that fear of like, paralysis choice. Like, there are too many options, there are too many things, and you do have a lot of options in the Godot engine, but it doesn't feel unmanageable, if that makes sense. Um, so I did that jam with a random group of people, and we were like, man, we want to do another Godot engine based, game jam. Like, when's the next one going to be? And at the time, the project manager for the Godot engine, they were running like a community game jam for them, but it was pretty infrequent, right? And we were like, we want to do one now. We were ready to go. Like we were riding that post jam high that you get when you complete a game jam. It's just like, yes, I can do anything and all the things. Even though what you really should do is probably just take a break and like go stretch and go outside. Uh, so one of the guys in the group, Christoph, he goes, well, why don't we just make the jam? Like, if there's not going to be one for a while, like, why don't we just make it? And I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty good with people. I'm pretty good with like talking to people and networking and like running things. Cause, in my game jam work and my freelance work, I had been doing, sort of producer production like stuff. So I thought, okay, why not? And my jobs that I was working was all about education. They were all about, talking to people about STEM and computer science and getting people excited about STEM and computer science. So my background naturally fit into this idea of creating this game jam, and thus the Godot Wild Jam was born. It's now been running for, gosh, it started in September of 2018. So we're coming up on our 4 year, which is kind of insane. But yeah, so I started the Godot Wild Jam. I think our first month we had like 17 entries or something like that. Like super, I mean, 17 was good. We were excited by 17. We were like, oh my gosh, we did nothing to prepare, and there are people here. We are crushing it. But now we are actually going to kick off our 44th jam in about 3 hours and 15 minutes. And we have like 200 participants signed up, and we now average anywhere between 60 to 90 game entries. So we run every month for 9 days. And it's awesome. Like the community picks the themes, and they also, well, they suggest themes, and then our admin team sort of like discusses behind the scenes like what is viable. And then we also have these wild cards that are they're inspired by Global Game Jam. It runs in like January, at the end of January every year, once a year, and they have these like diversifiers. So we kind of took inspiration from that, but they're like optional challenges for people who maybe you've done a lot of game jams, maybe you've done like a dozen game jams, and you're like, yeah, I don't see the value of this anymore. Well, wild cards are meant to sort of challenge you in that regard. Like maybe you have a limited color palette, or maybe you have to include like voiceover in your game, or maybe you just have to include chickens. Like they're weird and wild and wonderful. I can't believe I just made that pun. But it's a really great community, and it's a really great entry point for if you want to get interested, or if you're interested or want to try game development. Game Jam, even if it's not, my jam, any of the jams out there, Global Game Jam, Ludum Dare, there's like Narrative Game Jam, there's one that's for Metroidvanias that runs for like a month. Like there's so many jams out there made by awesome like community managers. They're an excellent entry point, and was honestly in, partially my entry point into the industry. I got a lot of experience. That's how I built my portfolio. Like, I that's what I showcased to apply to jobs in the industry. Like, hey, I worked on this game jam project and I built this, procedural generative system, and this is how I built it. And these are the tools that I used to build it. Like they're low stakes, they're low pressure, and they cost you nothing, just some time, and you can either do it by yourself or you can do it with a team. But they're such a useful like opportunity. And you know what? You may like meet up with a random group of folks that 5 years later you're still friends with, like I am in my communities. Like I have so many friends that are now like lifelong friends because of the time I spent in game jams. Um, I actually just gave a talk at the end of March at GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference, talking about like the benefit and usefulness of game jams, like why they're so vital to the industry, even after you get a job in the industry. Because there are a lot of companies that are now starting to use game jams as like this creative outlet, this way to sort of decompress and like mentally reset. Because, if you are interested in this industry, you do recognize or are aware of that, like burnout is real. And I think that's true of, any creative occupation, but especially true of like game development. So it's important to take care of yourself, which is why our jam runs for 9 days. Like we wanted to make sure we provided 2 full weekends for the jam, and also, made it accessible to people who have kids or have multiple jobs, or maybe they're in school and they're working a job, but they still want to get that experience. So it's really important, I think, for us to be like open-minded and also like accessible. Like accessibility is such an important and critical thing that we need to be better stewards of, like to ourselves and to others. So yeah, the Godot Wild Jam is a critical step in my journey, because I got the experience of game jams, and then I got the experience of running a game jam, which a lot of folks in our community have now gone on to, work on either AAA studios or at indie studios. And you know what the cool thing is though, is that they still participate in our community, because like that sense of community is critical to your ability to be creative in some ways. Like you're just, when you have a good network of folks around you to support you, and you have, people like encouraging you or giving you feedback or being like, hey, that's way out of scope, maybe you should scale back. Like it just helps you grow as a person and a developer. But even after creating this jam and it being like very successful, I still had doubts about like, am I good enough to do this? Which might sound silly, and it was in retrospect, but it's true. Like this imposter syndrome followed me around since I went to college and started pursuing my bachelor's in computer science, um, which ties back into like this idea of community. So in my program at the time, I was maybe one of like 3 women, which was, I didn't think was really a big deal or an issue at the time, but it definitely was for me. Like because I had a different outlook and different interests than a majority of the people in my program, I internalized and like devalued myself because of that. Like I was like, oh, I'm not good at programming because I don't want to work on blah 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 project, or like I'm not good at programming because of whatever, fill in the blank. So like this internalization of like I am not good enough to do computer science prevented like was one of my biggest roadblocks for myself from getting into the industry. It was, like I said, it wasn't until I did game jams and I participated in things like Advent of Code, which is like this advent calendar of programming puzzles. Like each day there's a new programming puzzle and it has like this cute narrative, but everyone around the world participates in it and you can do it in any programming language you want. I highly recommend, if you're looking to sort of like hone your skills to go and participate in that event. It was just so much fun because I did it with a group of people in our game jam community, and they were just so encouraging because I was like, oh yeah, I'm stuck on day 3. I think I'm gonna dip out. And they're like, no, you got this, like keep going. So like again, that sense of community and encouragement to sort of just like nudge you forward could really go a long way to like your personal growth for like game development work. So yeah, it took me years to drop the imposter syndrome and remove the idea that like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know how to program, because clearly I do in some capacity, like which is what led me to have my current position. So after running the Godot Wild Jam for these last handful of years, I really got to see a lot of different uh, disciplines and how they function and how they work. So like I don't know much as far as like animation or audio development goes. Like I know for animation you need a rig, right? Like and for audio, I don't know, you need audio software. The end. Like beyond that, I'm very limited in that skill set. But game jams allow you the opportunity to like explore those skill sets without really um without investing too much. Like I will say that like things like Udemy and other course sites like that are super beneficial for the deep dive. But if you want to like dip your toes and like get your feet wet, it's really beneficial. Because that's what I do now. Like if I'm gonna, so like I work as a programmer, but I still like writing and I like designing stuff. So now I join game jams and I'm like, hey, I want to do writing. I don't want to do programming. And that allows me like the opportunity to continue growing my skill set in different ways without, like taking away from anything else that I do, if that makes sense. So what comes with wearing lots of hats though in a game jam is you have to then figure out like, okay, I want to apply to game dev job applications that I see, but which ones do I apply for? So you'll see on the top here, I've got producer, narrative, designer, levels. I've got all the things because I had done a little bit of this work at different points in my game dev journey, right? Like for freelance work, I was a producer. I have done narrative design in a lot of my game jam projects. For level design, I even took a course from CGMA, the Computer Graphics Master Academy, one summer. And I literally paid money to take a level design course because I was like, level design, that's what I want to do. Nope, just kidding, it's not. Game design, as Patrick said when he introduced me, I'm working on a board game with my friend. I love tinkering with game mechanics and thinking about like game economies and how all that works. And then of course I have my bachelor's in programming and I've done programming throughout all this time. So which applications do I apply for? And this of course led to application spam. I would see something and I'd be like, oh, I have 2 out of 8 of those skills. I'm going to apply. And I'm sure we've all done this at some point in our careers, whether you're in game development or not, right? Like the application spam is real. I had, I think, like 3 different versions of my resume. I have a Google Drive folder of like a dozen or more cover letters for like 3 out of 5 of these positions, just with language that's like, hey, I have a little bit of experience in this, so you should totally pay me to do this. And then, of course, there's that question of like, do I want to be AAA or do I want to be indie? Because what I found in my experience from watching like my peers go through this and myself is that AAA, you really need to be super specialized. Like you can't be wearing lots of hats like this. Like if you're going to go for programming, you got to go for it. And like your portfolio should reflect that. And there are lots of spaces to get portfolio critiques. I know that the work with indies groups, they do offer critiques, as well as some other Discord servers for like specific roles. So they're out there. If you need them, go find them. They have great advice from like other game dev professionals, and it's just awesome. So I really had to narrow this down because this was insane. I was just casting my line and hoping and praying, and I did that on and off for like two years, I would say maybe. But then for my current position, I literally saw, I think I saw it on Twitter. I, and again, that goes back to, networking. Like I had done a lot of networking. I had, the first Game Dev Expo I attended, Shayna Moon from Sony Santa Monica, there we go, Studios was here. And I, picked her brain and got her contact. And then I went to GDC, right? Because I ran this game jam community and I met a lot of other people there that it's pretty tight knit group. So like once you start talking to people, you'll start making connections. And if you're an introvert, unfortunately, that is just part of how that works. I do wish our industry did a better job of like allowing people to lurk in the shadows but still be like actively involved. And I know that there are people that do that, but I just don't know them myself. I'm a pretty extroverted person, and like if I see someone that I know or has a similar interest to me, I'll just go up and talk to them. So I don't know if I'm lucky or cursed in that regard. But yeah, I decided that the only two roles that I was going to focus on was game design and programming, because I felt like from my game jam experience, that's what I had the most applicable experience with. Level design, dabbled in. Narrative design, dabbled in. Producer, dabbled in. Like so that's an important conversation that I probably should have had like way back here somewhere, right? But it's never linear, and that's kind of the point of this like flow chart. Is I wanted it to feel very chaotic because I think that a lot of people's game like journey into game development is very chaotic, and we don't all come from the same roles. Um, for my panel at GDC, one of the ladies before she got into games, she was a carpenter. Like you just they come from all walks of life, and like that's so useful as well. So don't make game development like your only interest or hobby. It's so important to have like interest outside of game development. Like, go garden, go hiking, go, I don't know, make jewelry. One of the people in our game jam and in the Godot Wild Jam community, he like hones stones and makes jewelry. It's like so cool. Because all of those other interests and like hobbies that you have will impact and like only improve your game development, especially if you're making a game from like a unique perspective, or you're doing world building that like requires assets. Like maybe a character has a profession that no one is familiar with, but you are because you have an interest in that. So like being multifaceted and having lots of like interest outside of game development, critical. And it'll help you in the long run too, because it's really good for your like mental health. Again, like the burnout is real. I know I said our game jam runs every month, but that's not to like force people to like, hey, I've got to participate every single month, oh no, I'm gonna miss it. It's more meant to be like, oh, I don't really feel like it this month, but that's okay because I can just come back next month. Like the community and the opportunity will still be here for me, even if I'm not like ready or available. And we also have a lot of people that just sort of lurk around, they're not even participating in the jam that month, but they're like, hey, yeah, if like someone needs help with something, like just hit me up. It's really cool to see that like organically happen, and like to foster that sort of sentiment. yeah, I'm just so proud of them all. They're such good eggs. But in my application spam, I ran into some serious issues. So like I had made some contacts with people, and like one of the people messaged me one day and they were like, "Hey Katie, we really liked your application, but like you put the wrong studio name in the application, like FYI." And I was like, "Oh my god, are you serious?" Like it was super embarrassing, right? So like in your application spam, like you should really think about the types of games you want to work on and like what studio you want to work at. So like if you see these job positions, check out the studio, go to their website, check out the people who work there, because like I don't know, do you want to work on the next like first person shooter, or do you want to work on like a relaxing like narrative simulator or something like that? Like it also depends on like what you want to do, because if you're working for a studio with like games that you don't enjoy, you're probably not going to do great work, right? Like I mean, and it doesn't always have to be, I'm not saying like purely make all of your decisions out of emotion. That's also like all things in balance, right? But like these are, I would say these two things are super important to like recognize and consider for yourself. And then once you have the answers to like what kind of role you want to have and whether or not you want to be AAA or indie, then consider doing a game jam and like trying out one of the any of the roles that you're interested in doing, to see if like that's a good fit for you. Like if you're not sure if you want to do like animation, maybe join a game jam and be like, hey, I want to learn how to do animation, because people in game jams are always learning. Like that's the point of them, right? They are meant to be sort of like this little safe space to like learn and grow and like try new stuff out. So like if you're really upfront with a team and you're like, "Hey, I've never done this before, but like I want to try it." You know, people are not going to like shut you down for that. And if they do, you should just find another group anyway. Because yeah, it's all about the opportunity to learn and grow as a developer and as a person. Like the Godot WoW Jam community has taught me so many things about myself, and like I said, about other disciplines. Like I said, I didn't know much about audio, but now I'm learning about like spectrogram and like waveform and how tracks are mixed, and like it's just so neat. I love it. I love it. Never stop learning. Also, just like a great rule of thumb to have like in life and in game development. But like I said, my current position, I swear, I think I saw it on Twitter. I honestly forget how I applied, but I just emailed and reached out. Like, and don't be afraid to reach out. Like the worst thing they can say to you is no, right? Like that's the worst thing can happen. And if they say no to you, then you just keep going. Like honestly, I had different interviews for different positions at some other studios before I started working at Whitethorn Games. And I'm honestly glad that those other places said no, because I love the place that I work at now so much. And the people there are just awesome. Like, they're my kind of people. And so, like, sometimes you have to be told no to find your people, which can suck in the moment, but is great long term. So, like, you got to be patient with yourself, and like don't don't quit the first time you hit a wall. um they're always saying like breaking into the industry, but people are making games everywhere. Like there are I don't think there's ever been more opportunity to join like the industry than there is now. You've just got to put yourself out there. So like start with game jams, build yourself a portfolio. It could, and if you're an artist, maybe you put your portfolio on ArtStation. If you're doing like programming or something else, like maybe take some time to learn how to like set up a website and go that route. It differs depending on your discipline, right? Like even I've seen a lot of level designers also use ArtStation for their portfolios. Like they'll, have like different screenshots of the level they've designed or blocked out or whatever. Yeah. And if you're interested in level design, there's also in October, there's like a monthly, no, for the month of October, it's called Blocktober. You might have seen like it on Twitter. They usually use a hashtag, But basically, it's where people just like make blockouts of levels all month long. It's kind of like Inktober, where like, and that's more for artists, where like they have different sort of themes each day for drawing stuff. But anyway, there are communities for all of these things, but highly recommend game jams to start from, and then it'll just naturally happen the rest of the way. I promise. It did for me, and I don't think I'm an outlier in this regard. So that's kind of like my journey into how I got here, and the advice that I would give. So yeah, I guess I will. And I'm so sorry for my background. My partner and I are in the middle of buying a house, so we're like packing, and it's pure chaos right now. So, but anyway, thank you. And if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Katie, thank you so much. That was a real treat. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no
we
problem.
all really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I've got a couple questions. I think maybe the first one, because this is it's really fascinating right now, at least to my mind, I'm sure to everyone else, is can you kind of break down the game jam, like the idea behind it, what really happens? So if you've never heard of the concept before, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I totally should have included that. Great point. Game jams are basically like a predetermined set of time where people get together and are like, I'm going to make a video game. They can either run for like 48 hours, for a week, for a month. It just depends on the people organizing the jam. But then once like the time is set, there's usually, like I said, a theme that's revealed at the start of the jam, and people use that to sort of like as like a jumping off point for brainstorming and thinking up ideas. And then by the jam's end, you are supposed to submit, basically like a prototype or an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. And actually, a lot of games from game jams have gone on to become like actual products. So like Celeste was made in a game jam. Hollow Knight, a lot of the ideas from it were started in a game jam. And Inscription, also game jam. So like there's some real nuggets in there if you can get your team to spend the time to like polish it afterwards.
Katie, if you've never been in a game jam before and you're maybe a little inexperienced programming wise, do they match you with is there an attempt to balance teams so that, or is it just, hey, if you the individual project people choose who comes in?
Right. So in our game jam, we have like a specific Discord channel for people to team up. And usually people will post like, what skills they can bring to a team, and like, maybe share a portfolio or like previous work they've done. We don't do anything to really force people of different levels to work together. We do try to recommend that, like, hey, if you're new and you've never worked on a jam before, and we want to pair, like, say, veteran members of the community with newer folks. But, we haven't quite figured out a way to make that happen naturally. I don't want to come out and just say like, hey, you've done 10 jams, you should work with so-and-so, like, right? That sort of like just kills the vibe. So in our community, no, but I know that there are other jams that sort of like ask for experience level and that kind of thing, but it just depends on what the group wants to do and what people feel comfortable doing. We also have a lot of people who go solo. I mean, they just participate by themselves, and that's perfectly viable as well. There are lots of like free assets, like Kenny assets are often used in 2D games that are submitted to our jam, as long as, and many others. So there are lots of free things out there to help you if you don't have all the skills needed to do it by yourself, if you want to do it by yourself.
Yeah, that's really good, Rob. That was a good question. I was wondering if I showed up to one of these game jams and I said, well, I have been thinking about studying JavaScript for 4 days now. Where should you, where do I fit in here?
Or some of our students, like,
Yeah.
they're comfortable in a classroom situation maybe, or maybe they're even the brightest star in the classroom, but then that jump to working with other people publicly, I was wondering
Yeah,
what that was like. Yeah.
the soft skills are just as important as the concrete skills. Like it's just it's important to be able to like communicate with your team and like because a lot of times during a game jam, it's low stakes, low pressure. So, say I've joined a team where it's like halfway through the jam, I've had to be like, hey guys, I thought I had the capacity and time to do this, but I just don't. So like I've got to dip, But being upfront and like clear in that communication is critical. I mean, and that'll just serve you well no matter what career path you take.
That's, like you said, it's kind of a safe place to be able to do that, to be that honest, and
Exactly.
that's
No
cool.
one's gonna reprimand you. You're not gonna be kicked out of the jam. Like,
Yeah, that's great. Uh, One of the things you said early on in your talk, you hit on this idea of imposter syndrome again, and people that were here for Gary's thing earlier. Gary came from a completely different thing, was kind of self-taught, and then the formal education came later. So when he got out, he said he has some imposter syndrome. You had the formal education first, and came in with those kinds of creds into this, and still have that. So it's everybody, right?
yeah, I think I was actually talking to some of my peers who are, also developers and like other sectors, but they're also programmers. And I was like, hey, like I just feel like I'm not contributing as much code to the project as everyone else on my team. Like, is this normal? And they were all like, oh yeah. And they've been doing it for twice as long as me. And they're like, yeah, we still feel that sometimes. I think it's just an inevitable mental block because with like games and programming in general, like you can't just say that like, oh, you contributed 1,000 lines of code and like that's great work. It's so subjective. My dad used to tell me because he also studied computer science, and he did more business end work, but he told me that like programming was like art, like a blank text file is your canvas and you can make whatever you want in there, and algorithms are your recipes in the kitchen, like make what you want. So I really took that to heart, and so I've tried to keep that mindset now, like professionally as well. There are definitely like best practices and good methods to do when doing certain tasks, but there's I feel like yeah, everyone has their own style and way of doing things, and that's hard to judge.
I have a question for you about the game jams, Katie. And you may have brought this up in your presentation, but I want to reemphasize it because I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from a person that's actually a veteran of it. The only type of people who show up at the game jams, I'm imagining, are not just game developers. That may be an assumption. So, like, talk about the variety of people you all have had show up because I'm guessing you definitely welcome people who are creative writers and artists and all that stuff. But the word is called game jam,
Yeah.
not writing jam, not art jam. So tell us about the wide variety of people that do show up at a game jam, and if people are not aware that they can too.
Yeah, so honestly, we have like a little introductions channel in our server, and lots of people come from all walks of life, from all over the world. We're because of Godot Engine, and like they have a GodotCon every year in Brussels, and so we're pretty Eurocentric, but we also have like a lot of people from Brazil. And some of these people are like, hey, I'm a software engineer and I've been doing like DevOps for years. Or like, hey, I'm a student. I have no idea what I'm doing. Help me out. Or yeah, they're from all walks of life. Like some of them are just like trade skill people, who are like working with their hands, but they want to dabble in something else because they see the job opportunity and the wage opportunity that's there. So yeah, everybody is welcome regardless of experience and occupational background. Again, safe space, low stakes. And our jam's a little unique in that we have a category for ranking accessibility. So we actually provide accessibility guidelines to make sure that game jam entries, allow for like rebindable keys, or like if you're colorblind, that I ran a code camp at 4-H where we actually had students from the School for the Deaf and Blind come and participate, and we ran the event virtually. And it was really disheartening to see how many platforms like Zoom, Code.org, and others just were not very friendly with like screen readers and didn't have any alternatives for students who were interested in pursuing computer science. I mean, like, we tout a lot of like, hey, we want more kids, more people, more students interested in computer science and doing work in STEM, but yet we're leaving a large chunk of people behind. And I was like, I don't want to do that when it comes to games, because I want to include everybody. So we actually had a lot of pushback on it initially in some regard, because people were like, it's just a jam game, who cares? But I think it's better to sort of train that sort of mindset so that when they do get a job professionally at a studio, they're thinking about that. And I'm sure you guys at school feel the same way, like, right, you're wanting them to think about things ahead of time for when they do become professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all habits, you started off to begin with from on the right foot, and so yeah, we're all about the ability for accessibility. Most years we actually have Aaron Priest come, who actually works here with the local Association of the Blind, and he actually does some reviews of games, and he comes and talks about the games that he's playing and the mod community who's fixed them up and stuff. So,
Wow,
and I
that's
know,
awesome.
yeah, and I know that Wraith Games several years back. Um, I just lost his name, but they've been building Collapsus, and they've been big on making sure they have all these different accessibility options built into their games. So, yeah, the way I see it is, you want as many people to be able to develop or to play your game. It just seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot from a
Yeah.
development standpoint. You don't go ahead and take advantage of trying to make sure they can all come to this platform and play your game, because that's more players that you're losing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's and like critical feedback as well. Like, yeah, we also try to provide like a playtesting space, so people who are working on like projects outside of the jam or even during the jam can sort of like throw ideas and things in there and be like, "Hey, will anyone like try this out for me?" Because we also value, like QA and playtesting as well. We really sort of try to include, I would say, like the whole pipeline. Um, from start to finish, like in a really, really fast paced, miniature way.
So I guess the last question that I would throw out there for you is, you've had this experience, you've been in the game industry a while. If your brother, your sister, your relative, somebody you knew was like, I want to get into game design now. I want to start this. Please tell me where I should start right now. You figure start dabbling in a game jam, you figure a certain engine you want to go with. Where do you lead them personally, Katie, at this point?
I constantly tell people to do a game jam, even and my feelings aren't hurt if they want to use Unity or Unreal or some other engine. Like, I don't take that personally. There are different tools for different needs. So I just recommend Godot because it's really beginner friendly, I feel. Like, the scripting language is very readable because it's similar to Python. And so I do try to nudge them to Godot, but just game jams in general. Actually, I'm the oldest of 6 girls, and my youngest sister is 11, and she's really into animation, and she wants to like do animation in games. And I've been telling her to do game jams. So
Well, that's awesome. That's great. Well, do you gentlemen have anything else you wanna throw out there for Katie?
No, I'm good. This has been great.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate you coming and talking, Katie. I my goal this year for the focus of the expo was to bring in as many local people as possible to help everyone tell their unique story getting in, so that people can see it's not one size fit all. You don't have to have already had a love for it from an early age. Like, there's a way you can get in if you have a passion. If you think out there, you know what, I think I'd like to dabble. I think I'd like to try it. Go for it. Like
Yeah,
I said, jump out there, do a game jam. Gary mentioned go to Udemy and buy you a $20 training module and see if you like it. And if you don't, $20 is not that big of a guilt.
it's true.
But once you do that, once you have some knowledge, jump into a game jam and see if this is really what you think it's cracked up to be, and you enjoy it. And if anything, at the end, hopefully, you will have a finished product that you can have as your first item on your portfolio to
Yeah.
forward from there. So,
And I guess one last thing
yeah,
you just reminded me is that,
sure.
reach out to your local community. There are definitely other people out there that have, a games interest, and maybe, I don't know, maybe they're too far away to like meet in person, but there are tons of Discords or Slacks or there are local communities out there. And if there isn't one, make one. People will come to it, start it up at your local library. I mean, there's opportunity there if you're willing to put in the work for it.
I think that's great information. I know here locally, I think there's an Unreal user group out of Huntington. I know you had turned me on to the BitBridge Discord a while back. So there's lots of
Yeah.
Discords out there for you to find for game jams and things like that to keep in mind. And yeah, if you got a friend that does game development, ask them. Do the old fashioned networking if you have
That's
to
right. That's
to go from
right.
there.
It
So
works. That's
yeah.
why it's still in use, right?
Yeah. Or hit up Katie on Twitter and ask her, hey, what do you know about in West Virginia about different places? So
Yeah, I do know a lot of people in the state at this point.
yeah, you do.
So
You do.
yeah, feel free to reach out. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me all my contact information is on my website at katiebaker.com. So yeah, feel free to hit me up.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Katie. We greatly appreciate you talking about your experience, your advice, your journey. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for
Yep.
having me.
Thanks.